UFC 308 is this weekend. I'm going to give my picks and predictions, thoughts and opinions on the card. Overall, pretty much everyone knows this is a banger card, especially the main card. Prelims have a potential to be boring, but I don't see how the main card is any level of boring. Besides, maybe Lerone Murphy and Dan Ige could be a bit of a snoozer. But when you've got shit like Robin Hamzat and Ilya and Max, I don't see how it fails to live up to the hype. The prelims, though, there's some shit on there where could put me to sleep potentially. But let's get into it. Opener of the prelims, Rinat Fakhretdinov versus Carlos Leal. Or Leal. I don't know how to pronounce his name because I've never fucking seen him. And it looks like he's fought a bunch of bums on his record. A bunch of guys that are 0-1 or have half as many losses as they do wins. And so I'm going with Rinat. Rinat has beat the future GOAT of welterweight, Brian Battle, my boy. And so I hold him in some high esteem. And as mentioned, Carlos has beat a bunch of bums. And so I don't trust him. Going with Rinat by decision. He doesn't have incredible finishing potential, at least from what I've seen in his UFC fights. And on the opposite end, he's also pretty hard to finish. So I don't see Carlos getting it done, although, as mentioned, I don't know anything about him besides his record. So yeah, decision for Rinat. Second fight on the card, Ismail Nardiev and Bruno Silva. I'm going with Bruno Silva. The man is quite the prolific finisher, and I don't think he's rated highly enough for that. Everybody praises Yuri for having like a 98% finishing potential in his fights, and Bruno's finished 20 of his 23 wins by KO. I know he's on a 3-fight losing streak, but can you really blame him when he's going against people like the GOAT Brendan Allen and Gerald Meerschaert, although that's not in the 3-fight losing streak that he's on? He lost to Magomedov, and I do think Magomedov is pretty good, and Chris Weidman, and that one's not too good of a loss, but if I'm remembering correctly, that was the fight where he was just eye-poking the shit out of Bruno Silva. So fuck Chris Weidman. I still believe in Bruno Silva. Never seen Ismail, and I'm not buying into the hype of the fellas with no mustaches. Going with a TKO in the second round for Bruno Silva. Third fight on the card, Farid Basharat and Victor Hugo. The odds on this fight are fucking crazy. As of the time I'm recording this, Farid is a negative 725 favorite, which is wild. And I'm going with him. I do think he's going to win, but being that confident is kind of crazy. The reason I'm going with Farid is, one, the Basharat brothers are at this point quite proven. I believe in them. And he's got some good wins. Lapulus is a great win. We just saw Lapulus kind of, not necessarily show out, but have a really good fight with Vince Morales. And who else has he won against? Blackshear. Blackshear was a good fight. Blackshear, well, maybe that's not as good as a win. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. Maybe I need to rethink this. No. Still going with Farid. He's proven. Fourth fight on the card, Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Chris Barnett. I'm going with Kennedy by, second round KO. I think Chris is getting up there in age. He relies too much on his kind of goofy striking style. I feel like it's going to be hard to get those goofy shots off on someone like Kennedy, who's 6 or 7 inches taller, got a lot more reach. He's more active with his shots, more accurate, can mix it up if needed, but I don't think he'll need to. And both of these guys are a little hit or miss, but I think Chris Barnett is even more hit or miss. His best win and his biggest moment was against Gian, is that how you pronounce his name? I always forget. Vellante, the dude that he fucking wheel kicked. And he's like 17-14 in martial arts. That's a terrible record, and that's his best win. He also got laid on by Boudet, subbed by Rothwell. Just not good looks, man. And his most recent win 2 years ago was against Jake Collier, and everybody fucking rags on Collier. And I know Kennedy lost against OSP, and that's a fucking terrible look too. But he KO'd Kutalaba, subbed Clark. He's definitely got better wins than Chris Barnett. I just think he'll be, I don't know, just more turned on than Chris Barnett. A little more accurate, a little more dangerous. And as I said earlier, Chris Barnett's getting up there in age. He's 38. He can't be just this blob at heavyweight for too long. It's going to come down eventually. Fifth fight on the card, Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. I'm going with Abus Magomedov. I think if he can manage his cardio, which he's been working on, and kind of stay safe for the early portion of the fight, let Bruno kind of punch himself out, tire him down a little bit, I think he has this pretty easy. His front kick is going to be a problem for Ferreira. And after seeing Ferreira get brutally finished by Nursultan Ruzaboyev, I have my hope in him doing too well has just kind of plummeted. I mean, after that he KO'd Phil Halls, who hasn't, and Saltzfuss, but I don't really think much of Saltzfuss, so he hasn't had too many great wins since his brutal loss. And although Abus got KO'd by Strickland, more so due to cardio really than like an actual like punching power from Strickland, he put up a really good fight against Baralho, and Baralho is potential future champion, and beat Warley Alves by decision. A good win and a good loss. And so he's looked better from his loss, and Ferreira's looked about the same since his. So yeah, going with late round 1, early round 2 TKO for Abus Magomedov. Sixth fight on the card, Mateusz Rebecki versus Miktabek Oralbai. I'm going with Miktabek Oralbai by decision. All around think he is a better fighter than Mateusz Rebecki. I also value his wins that he has in the UFC over Rebecki's. Uros Medic and Elvis Brenner are pretty good wins. They're nothing crazy, but I think they're better wins than Roosevelt Robert and Radziboyev and Nick Fiore. I forgot Nick Fiore even existed. He also has an 8-inch reach advantage and a 3-inch height advantage, which I think is going to be quite noticeable and effective. And yeah, motherfucker looks like he wrestled mammoths 13,000 years ago. So going with Oralbai by decision. Seventh fight on the card, Jeff Neal versus Rafael dos Anjos. I'm going with Jeff Neal, although I'm not super confident on this pick. I could see Rafael kind of holding him up against the cage, point fighting at range to a decision. I don't see Rafael getting him down. Jeff Neal has pretty good takedown defense. I think overall it is 88% on his takedown defense. And Rafael's takedowns they're all right. They're nothing crazy. He's got decent timing, but Jeff's pretty strong. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage, which I think is going to be pretty big. He's got a good jab, nice strong head kick. I don't see either guy finishing one another. Like, there's no way Jeff's going to submit Rafael, I don't think. I mean, it's possible, but not betting on it. And Rafael's really hard to finish. He's only been finished a handful of times. 4 times, 3 KOs, and 1 submission. And I don't know, I mean, Rafael Fiziev KO'd him in round 5, but, you know, that's a 5-round fight. He had a long time to figure out Rafael. They're somewhat even in some areas. Rafael's a more diverse striker, but Jeff Neal is a better boxer. So yeah, I'm going to go with Jeff by decision, although I will not be shocked if Rafael pulls this off somehow. Eighth fight on the card, Ibo Aslan versus Rafael Sakaria. I might be pronouncing that wrong, probably am. I have no idea why this is a headliner of the prelims over Jeff Neal and RDA. And I'm having a pretty tough time of who to choose, because Ibo Aslan made Anton Turkalj look good, and I think Anton is absolute dog shit. And he took Anton to the third round and KO'd him, but that was a rematch. He had previously lost to Anton in the first round from a rear naked, I'm pretty sure. But on the other hand, Rafael has 11 wins, and only one of his opponents has a win in mixed martial arts, and that guy was 9-6. Every other opponent he has fought has lost all of their fights. So his opponents' records are like 9-18. Some absolutely ludicrous bullshit. And so I don't know who to go with. Do I choose the dude who's beating up absolute bums? Or do I choose the guy who almost went to a decision with the fucking Pleasure Man? Fuck it. I'm gonna choose Ibo Aslan. Just because he's younger, and that's literally the only deciding factor. I'm just looking at their stats on ESPN there, and since I can't see any stats or anything for Rafael, not even a fucking photo of him, and he's beat absolute bums, at least Ibo has beaten guys with wins. Even if Anton is terrible, Anton has won in mixed martial arts before. So yeah, I'm going to go with Ibo Aslan, and shit, I guess since every fight he's ever won has been by KO, I'm going to say KO in the third round. Ninth fight and the opener of the main card, Shera Magomedov versus Armen Petrosyan. I'm going with Magomedov. I think he's going to be too diverse and quick for Armen. If Armen could mix it up a little more and impose his game, I would be choosing him because I think Shera is beatable, but not by someone like Armen. Armen gets a little too complacent at times in the striking. I think he's going to be overwhelmed by how quick Magomedov is and how diverse he is in his striking. I know I just said that shit twice in a row. Sound like a broken record. But yeah, his kick game is going to be able to keep Armen at range. Armen's got quite short arms for being 6'3", and he is a big fucking dude too. If he could act, like I said, if he could mix up his game, implement takedowns, he would kind of be a force in there. I mean, he's a fucking large dude, but he's just not going to be able to do that. He's got a .22% takedown average. With how explosive and quick Magomedov is on the feet, he's just not going to be able to find that. I don't think he's going to be able to really hold him in the clinch or anything. And yeah, so he's pretty tough too, Armen. So I probably am going to go for Shera by decision. Just completely schooling him on the feet for the most part of the fight. Maybe he slows down and loses round 3, but I'm willing to bet Magomedov will bag round 1 and maybe 2 easily. 10th fight on the card, Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. Now, this could be the snoozer of the main card. This has the potential to be a point fest, tepid range striking, or boring grappling match. I have faith, though, that it will not be. And I'm going to be choosing Lerone Murphy by decision. I think he will be too technical on the feet, and if he gets in trouble, I think he can take Dan Ige down and hold him there if need be. We've seen Dan Ige lose to grapplers before, and he's all right on the ground, but Lerone is pretty good, and he's got a 2.5-inch reach advantage and 2 inches of height on him. So I think that's just going to help him even more in the striking. I mean, we saw what was his last fight against Edson Barboza? Yeah, that absolute ass whooping he laid on Barboza definitely raised my opinions of Lerone. And I've never thought low of Lerone. He's never been one of my favorite fighters, but I've always thought of him as a dude that will eventually be in the top because he's so well-rounded and just never he never disappoints. And Dan Ige doesn't really either. I just think he's a step behind Lerone. So yeah, I don't see either of these guys being finished, but I do see Lerone getting a decision win. The feature fight of the card, Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. This is a hard pick because this is a very interesting matchup, but I'm going with Alexander Rakic by decision. He impressed the fuck out of me in the Yuri fight. He had Yuri in all sorts of trouble in that first round. He looked like one of the most competent light heavyweights I've ever seen before the second round, and Yuri just channeled his inner fucking weeaboo bullshit and just refused to be put down. I think Rakic's leg kicks are going to be a problem. Magomed does do a good job of countering leg kicks, and he can potentially take Rakic down off of the leg kicks, but Rakic has really good takedown defense. He's got a high percentage for it. He's really fucking strong and got good grappling technique. And I don't think that Magomed is going to be able to just hold Rakic up against the cage. He's fucking huge and very strong. I mean, not saying Magomed isn't, but I don't know, man. I just think Rakic not necessarily has Magomed's number, but it's just like he's got all of the tools to beat Magomed. And it's just whether or not he can implement them and stay safe. Because I do think if someone's to get a finish in this fight, it's going to be Magomed. But I can see Alexander out-techniquing him to a decision. But I might be wrong. This is probably one of the more risky fights I'm choosing on the card. But yeah, Alexander decision is my pick. In the co-main event, Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. Now, it hurts me to choose or to pick against Bobby Knuckles, but I have never went against Khamzat, and I've never been disappointed. Yeah, he had tough fights with Gilbert and Kamaru, but who the fuck hasn't? People argue that they made him look human, but hell, did he not make Usman look a little human? I mean, goddamn, Usman was dominantly winning against Leon Edwards before he lost, and he was having an absolute war with Chimaev. I see a lot of people making the, not even a lot of people, pretty much everyone is saying this is either a first-round finish for Chimaev or a TKO for Robert whenever he can find it after that. And I don't really ascribe to that. As much as Khamzat does drop off in the latter rounds of a fight, it's not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. People act like he is just absolutely winded and just done for after round 1 ends. But his round 3 against Gilbert, he was pretty obviously winning. I mean, hell, it was a fucking back and forth war. He was landing bombs on Gilbert. He kind of has that same level of cardio, or not level, but that same style of cardio as Dricus. Like, when they get tired, they don't really, they don't stop. They keep going nearly at the same pace as they were before. They just get a little sloppier. And speaking of Dricus, if I have seen Dricus take you down and nearly latch up a submission, and I know it was a different style of takedown that Khamzat is going to do. It was like a head and arm throw that he hit on Robert. But still, he took Whittaker down and nearly locked up a Darce. If Dricus can do that, Khamzat can do it. And so I'm going with Khamzat probably by, middle of round 2 or late round 1 submission. I see a lot of people saying it's probably going to be difficult to take Whittaker down, but I feel like no matter who you are in the first minute of a fight, Khamzat's going to get you down. It's an inevitability, unless, there is no unless. He's going to get you down. I think Whittaker can probably survive for a little bit, but he's going to eventually make a mistake, and Khamzat's going to capitalize on it. So yeah, Khamzat by submission, round 2. And in the main event, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. And this is another fight where it hurts to pick against my boy, but I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria. I think he's kind of like a more dangerous Volk for Max. Although I do think Volk is a bit more of a technician and a machine, but Fuck, man. I don't want to see it, but I think Ilya's going to knock Max out. Maybe not a clean KO, but I think he can potentially TKO him. Ilya's ability to slip straights is something I feel is being overlooked. A lot of people, like I even saw Bedtime saying Ilya doesn't move his head much, but when I rewatched his fight against Volk, Volk was jabbing a lot in the first and second round, and Ilya was doing a really good job of slipping the jab and countering with it. I do think that could potentially be a problem for him because Max has really good uppercuts, and that sneaky spinning kick could potentially fucking flatline him if he slips off to the side and Max feints something and hits that little spinning kick. Front kicks and roundhouses also, in my opinion, could be a good weapon against Ilya. And we kind of saw the kicks was like seemingly Volkanovski's entire plan against Ilya. I mean, the first round he was just leg kick, body shot, and head kick over and over and over. But Max doesn't use his kicks nearly as much as Volkanovski. And speaking of kicks, Ilya's leg kick could be a problem for Holloway. I know we saw Gaethje kind of batter Holloway's legs, and it didn't seem to wear on him too much. Holloway's one of those guys that have calves that are nearly the size of their thighs, and I've always noticed that dudes that have legs that are built like that can just take a fucking beating to the calves. And while Gaethje hits harder, has more force on the impact of his kicks than Topuria, I think Topuria has better technique and higher accuracy. Like, he can hit the same spot repeatedly. We saw like the first 2 or 3 leg kicks that he landed on Volk ended up with a nasty welt and hit the exact same spot every time, was nearly sweeping him off his feet. And so even though I don't think Holloway is going to have his leg taken out from under him or, not be able to stand on it, Topuria potentially could cause some good damage there. Max's footwork is better. I don't know. I don't know if I'd say better. Not Topuria. Volkanovski can pivot and move laterally a little better than Holloway, but I think Holloway, I don't know. It's hard for me to explain this. I guess it's because Holloway has longer legs. He can just skirt in and out a little faster than Volkanovski. Volkanovski's footwork's a little prettier, but even with that nice footwork Volk had, Topuria still was able to shepherd him towards the cage. He does this with every opponent, I swear. He just manages, even with inferior footwork, he gets guys up against the cage, and he just starts letting shots fly. And I think that's what's going to happen to Holloway, man. It could backfire on me on this pick. Holloway has the potential to finish this fight. We've seen it. He's getting better at defending shots, sitting down on his shots, and just generally striking in all. He is managing to evolve somewhat late in his career, even though he's still really young for MMA. Man, this fight fucking tears me up, dude. Goddamn, I don't want either guy to lose. But I kind of don't want Holloway to win, because I don't want to see one of these rock, paper, scissors type situations at the top 3 of a division. I fucking hate when that shit happens, and it just seems like there's no true champion. If Topuria manages to KO or finish Holloway in a definitive fashion, it's going to be cemented that he is the rightful champion. And we won't have to worry about this whole bullshit of if Holloway wins, then everyone will be saying, yeah, but you lost to Volkanovski. And I dread that shit. I don't want to hear that. So, with reluctance, I'm going with a Topuria TKO late round 3. And I hate this narrative of as soon as it goes past like the halfway point of round 3 that Holloway is just going to take over out of nowhere because of his volume and shit. Like, we have no evidence of that. We haven't seen Topuria in round 4 or 5. And so I don't know how people can just be making that assumption with half of the evidence. So yeah, going with Topuria. late round 3 TKO. And that is it for this card. If you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, you know the drill. And if not, I will see you in the next video. Godspeed.